Hello everyone and welcome, Annabelica here. Today we will be working on this fierce warrior woman. I am super excited to share this with you all, so let's get started. So I decided to start off this video by showing me do the line work in her face. I'm using the Micron Pens in 01 and 05. I use the 01 to do the preliminary line work to make it nice and clean, and you'll see later that I will go in with the 05 to add a little bit more depth and interest to the lines. My preliminary sketch is done with Prismacolor's Col-Erase pencils. I really like using these. They're a little bit more interesting in your sketchbook, and they actually look a lot better when they're layered in watercolor, because you'll find that graphite gets a little bit smudgy when working with water-based mediums. So watercolor and even acrylic will get a little bit smudgy. So yeah, I like using the Prismacolor. It layers really well. And it doesn't end up so muddy as graphite would. So here you can see that I'm lining the rest of the body. I apologize for how blurry it is around the edges. I had a little bit of difficulty in setting up my recording. Time-lapse on my camera can only be recorded in miniature mode, so that means the center is super focused and the outside is really blurry. But I am working on getting a new camera, so hopefully next week I will have this all figured out for you guys. So you see here that I'm also adding a little bit of cross-hatching for shading with my Micron. This just makes it a little bit easier when I go in with the watercolor again to see where my shading should be. So it adds a little bit more depth and texture in 3 different layers. So I'm doing a little bit of shading with the preliminary sketch with my Col-Erase, and then adding cross-hatching for another layer, and then the final layer in watercolor. So I find that gives it a little bit more texture, a little bit more interest than if I was just to shade with watercolor at the end. And here you can see that I'm going in with my 05. Yeah, just adding a little bit more shading and dimension to my line work, just to make the overall image a lot more interesting. And starting the watercolor on the face, I've actually found, because I usually actually work in acrylics, watercolor is a fairly new venture for me, and you can see in my previous videos I kind of had a little bit of difficulty doing skin tones with the watercolor, because watercolor actually dries a lot lighter than you expect it would, whereas acrylics often dries darker. So I decided to be a little bit more bold today with the color right off the bat, and I think that it worked out really well for me. I'm really pleased with the result. Some shading here with the armor. I wanted it to have a little bit more texture, so you can see that I'm going in with my watercolors and kind of doing like a dabbing motion rather than a sweeping motion for the most part. I wanted it to look like worn armor. It kind of gave it that texture that I was looking for. So I guess here I can talk about my inspiration for this project. I'm really into superhero movies, so I've been looking at a lot of these really fierce, amazing women that have been in these superhero movies. So like Valkyrie from Thor Ragnarok was a huge inspiration for me, especially with the shape of her upper armor. And of course all of the amazing women in Black Panther. I love that movie. I am so excited about it, and if you haven't seen it, which you probably have, I definitely recommend it. Obviously I am also like referencing a lot of Northwest Coast indigenous design. I myself am actually Northwest Coast indigenous. I am Gichatla, which is sort of around Tsimshian territory. I also have ties to Nisga'a people through my paternal side. So yeah, this is obviously inspired by regalia from my own region. Also worth noting, this is completely a fantasy version of an indigenous warrior. This is not at all what our traditional warriors would have looked like. Yeah, hence the swords. I'm pretty sure we didn't have swords or even arm and leg bands. We did have copper. You can see that copper shields are pretty prominent in our culture, and we're kind of a symbol of status. So I wanted to give her that as well. Like, it kind of lends to the power of the image, I feel. I kind of had to cut out a large part of me working on the background because I didn't have it centered, so it was really blurry, so I apologize for that. Still working out some of the kinks in filming. And there's me trying to be helpful. So what I just showed you was Liquid-X Basics. It's an acrylic paint in copper, and that is what I'm using to paint her arm and her leg bands here. Also, sorry for my face. Yeah, my camera awareness is not quite there yet, but stay patient with me. I will figure this out, I swear. So here I decided that the watercolors were not making these designs dark enough, so I decided to go in with my Micron pen, and it was kind of easier because I had a little bit more control over where to place it. So here's me trying to be helpful again. For those of you that missed it, that was a Sakura jelly roll. So I used the jelly roll to create these dots along her shorts and on her armor. I wanted those to look a little bit more like buttons, so kind of referencing our traditional button blankets and our traditional dance regalia. Also going back in here with the Micron to add fringe, because if you know us, we love our fringe. I think that also helped to lend itself to a little bit more movement in the piece, so I definitely wanted it to look like she was moving forward, so the movement of the fringe really added a little bit to that. So here is the finished piece. I'm quite happy with how this one turned out. I think she looks pretty awesome, if I do say so myself. If you guys liked it too, remember to subscribe to my channel. I will be uploading videos every Friday. Thanks so much for tuning in. Bye!